So I can't see any GSP project that I could, or plan I could support with Sunnis Dam in there. It's just, that's a really big sticking point in the way that we've been treated with that.
Well, my understanding is with that dam that it's not really feasible to raise it, and that the benefit doesn't equal the cost to do it. And unless the Army Corps of Engineers decides that they want to do it for some reason, that the county wasn't going to pursue it any further. So although it is listed there, most of the, well, I would say everything other than maybe the last item and the first item are pretty pie in the sky kind of options.
I read from the report something about $50 million for a Knoxville pipeline right out from Ozona.
The Knoxville water and state water being allocated sources, reallocating those would be pretty difficult and costly.
You'd have to buy it from somebody who already has
Yeah,
allocation.
you'd have to get it from somebody who already has it, so they don't want to get rid of it.
And they also have to have the infrastructure to get it.
Yeah, and that's where most of the cost comes from, is you're paying probably a third of the cost into to getting it, and then probably 2/3 of the cost into building something to get it somewhere. Most of the two of those projects, the state water project and the Osmino, they're very heavy on the infrastructure, getting it from where it is now to not very far away. Most of the state water is only going 10 miles.
Well, yeah, right under one of the schemes, yeah, it was going to Creston, I think was the closest.
So the problem with the state water is that the water that they're using to make these calculations is in a financial reach that doesn't, the plant that we would have to go through doesn't have the capacity to run through. So it's all, it'll never happen in this way, in my opinion.
When the Nacional project was finished and Pastorals wanted us to buy some of their share where they would recharge the basin. You guys recall some of that?
I don't remember, that's way before I was here.
They were wanting San Miguel to buy a portion of their share, and then it goes back into the basin, and that counts for our portion of recharging the basin. Have you heard about that?
That lost in the
$7 million to San Miguel.
Well, Pastorals volunteered it, of course.
Right.
And they were trying to say, you know, because the pipe goes to Pastorals, and they would recharge the basin, but volunteered us to pay them for their portion that they paid, and then we could count that as our portion to recharge the basin.
Without getting any recharge.
Well, the recharge, we get the credit for the recharge because we were buying Pastorals. Pastorals had a share of that net Lake Nacional water. So they were trying to sell part of their share to us. The water would flow through the infrastructure to Pastorals, it would get recharged into the basin, but because we were paying them for their portion, then we would.
You'd never see it out of your well pumps here.
Well,
Correct, and that was one of the big issues, it was like a money grab kind of thing.
Sure.
Because we had to have a program, we didn't have the infrastructure, they had it, and they're like, well, we'll just take money from them and give them the credit for dumping it in the river.
Yeah. Yes.
Robin Chapman, the reason I was late was because I got a call from Wes Thompson at, an engineer with the county of San Luis Obispo, who is some high up guy with the Nacimiento Water Project. And I called him to ascertain, I said, isn't all the Nacimiento water allotted? Isn't it already spoken for? And he said, yes, it is. And I said, how could this GSP propose to buy Nacimiento water and recharge wells with it? And so basically there would be some formidable hurdles to jump, some of which are regulatory, one of which we already mentioned was infrastructure of getting it here. But then there's also the people that would be willing to sell it would probably be willing to sell it in a wet year, which means that San Miguel would also need storage. So I really think most of these level 2 are not feasible at all. And one of which, I don't know if you're gonna bring that up or not, is a recharge at the confluence of the San Miguel and Estrella Rivers, which happens to be a property that my husband's family owns. No one from the county, from the state, from the, Montgomery, the consultants has ever set foot on our property, have never called us. You know, they've never asked us, just like they don't know the level of our wells.
Well, even.
You know, how did they come up with this idea?
Even the state water.
I have some of the same questions, the state water project, they haven't talked to Central Coast Water Authority. I've talked to Ray Stokes, the executive director, no one's contacted him. And he's the guy to talk to.
Yeah, so, I mean, where are these people pulling these ideas out of? And, you know, I mean, it seems like you're paying a lot to this consultant for a bunch of stuff that isn't feasible, and for putting a whole bunch of responsibility on the individual CSAs without any funding.
Well, unfortunately, outside the National Water Pipeline project that was proposed for $50 million, most of those I saw about 5-6 years ago. And the county already spent, I think, at least $1 million on the original plan. And a lot of it got lifted and we got no bill, in my personal opinion. It seems like. The only thing I don't see on that project list is they're proposing to dam Jack Creek 6 years ago. So these projects, I don't know who's gonna pay for them. I don't know how. It's unfortunate. And I really don't see us getting anywhere fruitful in most of these projects outside of our wastewater treatment plant.
Well, unfortunately, the discussion at the last GSP meeting, or the cooperative committee meeting, basically Derek Williams said that we don't actually have to have projects in the GSP, that we're just putting them in there. I think what happened was, and this is my speculation, is that they took the projects that had already been around in the mill, and they said, okay, well, we'll throw them in there. And then because we said we were gonna do tertiary water, they threw us in there too. Not that there was any background done on it, it just, those were things that had been around. Most of these projects probably, with the exception of the tertiary water, which we are obviously already working on, are not really likely to go forward. But they are a project nonetheless. So I think that's why they're still included. But are they ever gonna get done? Probably not. Is there ever gonna be money for them? Probably not.
What you haven't seen are the maps of the areas that these management actions would benefit. And if you look at the map that's attached to each level 2, the state water project, the Nasamino project to the, you know, wherever, I don't know who owns those wells. There are a few wells that are shown in each project that would benefit. And maybe looking at those and who owns them might shed some light on why that specific area or project was chosen.
And those maps are in the draft chapter 9 that's on our portal.
Okay.
Well, I think Paso Robles dumped a bunch of water to the north side of Paso Robles. They have a water well below the Thunderbird Wings Tower. And all it did was rejuvenate Templeton's water supply. So this river is very unpredictable, as you guys know, you especially.
Maps like this,
Yes. But you have to magnify a lot.
right.
Basically, at this point, from the staff and the cooperative committee, basically, they were able to narrow it down, so we're not being forced into paying for something that's not gonna benefit us, which is the main thing to take away from this, is they can list whatever they want. But really, even if it's nonsense, at the end of the day, we don't have to pay for it if it's not going forward to benefiting us.
We are gonna have to pay for it at the end of the day if we end up in a negative situation. The state says, oh, hey, look, guys, you guys didn't actually manage your basin.
Well, and that comes down to the individual GSAs to manage the GSP within their GSA. So,
Right, which is why.
so if San Miguel is saying, okay, well, we're pumping 300 and we're putting back 200, so our net draw is 100, then how long is that gonna be before we get to our measurable objective or to our minimum threshold. If we're meeting what we're said we're going to meet, then they're not gonna come back on San Miguel and say, well, you know, Passo's not doing it. Well, that's Paso, we're San Miguel.
But
So we have to make sure what we do is aligned with sustaining the water in this area.
now, if a neighbor outside of our boundaries, because the county isn't following through and nobody else is, you know, we're doing our part, but they're still pumping and the groundwater in our community drops because they're monitoring that well, aren't they still gonna come back on the community that's?
Well, and that's why we're trying to incorporate more wells into our monitoring so that we can say, okay, our average drawdown is this much. So they're not going on based off one well that doesn't really match 100% with what our actual pumping wells are. But if you Paso, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if Paso says, you know what, we're not gonna do any of this, which is not gonna happen, by the way, but, or the county says we're not gonna do any of this, then, and their inaction causes a detriment to this district, then if the state comes down and says, well, you're not meeting your objectives, well, we can prove that their action or inaction is causing our problem. And then we just have to readjust what we're doing. So have to fix what they're doing and have to fix what we're doing to meet our minimum objectives.
You really think the county's actually gonna do something?
I don't think they're not gonna do nothing. I mean, I don't think they're gonna do nothing. I think that they're gonna do what they need to meet the obligations under this plan. They're just as liable as we are to make sure that we're meeting our objectives under this plan.
Well, don't they have a state hammer hanging over their heads also?
Yeah,
We all,
That's what I mean, if it's not done locally, then the state will step in.
Oh, sure.
but even though it's a plan over the entire basin, if parts of that basin are meeting their objectives and part of it isn't, then either there's something wrong with the plan or there's something wrong with the implementation. And if the state comes back in 5 years and says, what's going on? Why is this one area still having a major problem? Then, you know, that GSA should have taken action to mitigate that issue. Maybe they are taking action and it's not meeting the criteria in a timely fashion. In which case, there's provision to reassess the plan and move forward.
My thing is that with the amount of money that this community is spending, I think we really need to have this serious conversation about real, tangible level 2 projects. I know we have the tertiary, but I think we really need to have a list that we could actually feasibly work on, down the road, 20 years or whatever. I think that'd be the most prudent and responsible thing instead of approving garbage I've seen 6 years ago.
Well, and the plans that are in here are just a list of plans that they're incorporating into this GSP. It does not mean that these are all we can do. We can do anything that the district feels is necessary to meet our obligations. So if that means that we need to build some sort of recharge wells within the district, if that means that we need to buy property and offset well pumping downtown to well pumping somewhere else, if we need to, create some sort of rain catchment devices or whatever, we can go after whatever we need to meet our ends. It doesn't have to be with the rest of the GSP or the rest of the committee. It doesn't have to be with anybody else. If it encompasses somebody else, we can see if we can interest them into paying for part of it. Our most likely candidate for that would be the county, since they surround us. But it may be a joint project with Paso. Maybe we work with them to put in a certain amount of water in the river every year. It's
That cost is advantageous, obviously. But at the end of the day, if we have projects that are being suggested, recommended, or are just, in the end, unrealistic placeholders, whose responsibility is it to dream up these projects? Is that on us as a GSA to develop a mindset to where we're coming up with plans that are gonna help us be sustainable through the duration? And that means ultimately our area we're responsible for. We're not responsible for what Paso Robles does. So I guess that's on us.
It is our responsibility, and I think on Thursday night, you're gonna hear about, another plan that we've been working on. So yeah, we, the staff and us have been, we know we have to take care of ourselves, right? And we're, I think, unique in that we do, if you can see from the hydrograph of that well, we benefit from what's going on in Salinas River, whereas Shannon, they don't. So we're unique there. We're unique that we have a wastewater treatment system that we can capture, treat, and reclaim and use that. Only Paso is the only one in the basin that has that. We have a relatively small footprint that we, have to manage, right? And I think that's a benefit, compared to the county that has an immense amount of land that they have to try to do things on. So I think there's a lot of positives with regard to our position to become sustainable. And I think we're gonna be able to show, because we have been, and we're gonna continue to be, we're gonna be able to show, if the state ever does show up, that we are proactive. We have been proactive, and we will continue to be proactive. I gotta believe if they show up and say, you guys have been working hard and doing a lot and spending money and doing a lot and doing the best to make it better, and you guys over there haven't done squat, I kinda feel like they're gonna be a little more punitive to the other folks. I hope at least.
I don't know about that, because we've seen the modeling that shows that the basin was depleted around the city of Paso Robles, and we're still in it. It was, the state didn't care. So why are they gonna care now if we created a joint plan with these other people and they dropped the ball? The state said, you guys all work together, you're all responsible. They said it in the past, I don't think the state's gonna change, that's my concern.
Well, there's a new law in place. SIGMA is new, so there's new, they've got a new hammer that they didn't have before.
Sure, no, the state does, but I've seen the county, you've seen the county, and I don't have much confidence in them carrying out feasible projects with some of our big pumping neighbors outside of our boundaries.
The county has turned over a lot of people. A lot of the people that were at the county that were really anti-growth, anti-work are gone.
So there's now a vacancy for our public works director?
Administrator.
Administrator.
But I think that the county is going in a better direction. Even in the time that I've worked here, the county has gone, they have